By way of analogy, let me explain the title of this top 10. Like a lot of people, I grew up with a piano in my living room. The difference is that mine came with a classical pianist/music professor, my dad. His dad spent the war playing jazz piano at the Officers Club in Pearl Harbor. I guess musical aptitude skips the third generation. A classical musician for a dad isn't really something you appreciate as a 9-year-old. Not when he's painstakingly trying to find his way through a new concerto while I'm trying to watch Darkwing Duck and the Rescue Rangers. But after the divorce, I did miss it. Divorce for an 11-year-old is a soul-altering, identity-mangling kind of experience. My entire world was family, and my identity was being a member of it. When the family broke and cracked into pieces, I lost any sense of home or belonging. The 5 of us weren't in the same room again for a decade, when I was in my early 20s and my sister was getting married. My sister asked him to play, and Dad played a piece of music that was very significant for us. Just the first few notes were enough to be pulled out of time, like this familiar smell that transports you to a different place. But instead, I was reliving the sensation of home, and family, and safety. Music really is the heart's native language. All of us began to cry, and I got to have this shiny moment of clarity that come whatever fights, or squabbles, or even a divorce, we are still a family. There are connections between us that may vibrate and strain as we play against them, or even lay silent when we ignore them, but never break. And for the length of that piece of music, I knew that everything was going to be all right. And I found that that phenomena persists in Buffy and Angel. So here, to celebrate the arrival of our 10,000th subscriber, I thought I might try to run through my top 10 Buffy or Angel episodes that remind us that everything is going to be all right. As with the previous top 10, there are some deal-breaking spoilers about to follow. If you haven't finished both Buffy and Angel, stop watching right now. We're a particularly argumentative bunch, we Whedonverse fans. I've learned that the hard way. For every hardline opinion I've taken on an episode, or a season, or even a particular character, there's always been a quickly formed line of people ready to tell me how totally off base I am. And I accept that. But can we please try and agree on one thing? Connor is the worst. And it has nothing to do with Victor Kartheiser's performance or really any of the ancillary plots he's involved in. It's more the perfect storm of his problematic character. I've found 1 or 2 Connor apologists who will say it's not his fault. He was a child in the Hell Dimension, manipulated by multiple men to be their puppet. He had a horrible upbringing and spent his entire life being lied to. Of course he has trust issues. And to all of these justifications, I would respond with one single word. Exactly. Connor is a dour, unfunny, pig-headed stick in the mud by design. And he gets absolute truckloads of screen time in season 4. And you know what? That just isn't entertaining to watch. If there is a defining characteristic to Whedon properties, it's charm, wit.
Can I be blind too?
Wry intelligence.
Hi.
None of which Connor has. I think Angel Season 5 is as good as any single season of Buffy, but I would still rate Buffy the better show, if only because they didn't give Dawn superpowers in a revenge storyline. Plus she had that little bit one time when she threatened to set Spike on fire in his sleep. That was pretty awesome. But the writers even make Connor difficult to empathize with, instead always having him irrationally starting problems even when he knows he's wrong. There are only 2 Connor moments I actually enjoy. The first is when it's revealed to us that he already knew that Jasmine wasn't this beautiful goddess, but was instead some worm-infested otherworldly being.
I know what she looks like. She's beautiful.
It's a terrific little moment of insight into his character. Again, it's not that I don't appreciate that Connor is a complex character, I just find him powerfully unfun to watch. And my second favorite moment was when Faith just kicks the crap out of him in ORPHEUS.
Break me off a switch, son. It's about to be a whooping.
ORPHEUS has a considerable amount of charm in Angel's bleakest season. I love the way ex-angry evil witch Willow flirts with future angry deposed goddess Fred. And I'm a total sucker for episodes that feature Angel's historical background. But the shining moment for me is when Faith elbows Connor in the face and then throws him across the room. For every punch to his stupid, dumb, unfunny face, I felt a strand of muscle untense for the first time since Connor dumped Angel in the ocean. or slept with Cordelia, or didn't see through Holtz's schemes. Did I just make it weird? In a recent rewatch of Buffy, I discovered a fascinating echo that occurs between Buffy Season 2 and Angel Season 5. Lie to Me is a foundational episode for the series, a bold mission statement. It was Prophecy Girl that really demonstrated that the show was about characters with souls and beating hearts. But in Lie to Me, I think Whedon loudly announced his desire to talk about ideas that were greater than the sum of Buffy's fiction. Ford's plan to turn Buffy over to Spike in exchange for immortality and his proclamation that he didn't have a way out other than this really revealed for Buffy a cold and complex universe. She took pity on Ford and his fear, while still resolutely retaining her own moral and ethical backbone. But when the deed was done, and she and Giles are standing in the graveyard at the end of the episode, she seems to need a break, and asks Giles if things ever get simpler.
What do you want me to say?
Lie to me.
His response is kind and empathetic, but in the way of a parent who tells a child what they want to hear, couched in a playful tone. It is enough, and we can tell by Buffy's reply that she's gotten the small measure of peace she needs simply by his willingness to say anything. And I was reminded of...
Would you like me to lie to you now?
Yes. Thank you, yes.
It's strange how much the two scenes share in common. Both bookend a lifetime in a way. Giles's playful truthfulness is a loving invitation into adult life. Illyria's is her first expression of gentleness and a goodbye. And both are acts of mercy. I find them both a comforting reminder that one of the great gifts we can provide each other is a temporary shelter from relentless reality. Life may not get simpler, and Illyria may not be Fred. But when it comes to the safety and well-being of the people we care about, sometimes you have to ask yourself, who cares? My favorite type of fiction tends to put character first and plot second. You know the type. They feature universes full of characters you relate to so personally that you could still enjoy 30 minutes of just watching them waiting for a bus together, or sitting in line at the DMV. They may stumble and fall, but they always behave in a way that makes you say to yourself, oh, of course, Willow would definitely do that. And the cardinal sin in this kind of fiction is when a character does something just to move a plot forward. Now, most of the arc I'm about to cover is done much more thoroughly and articulately in the essay, The Assassination of Cordelia Chase by Jennifer Cruise. There's a link in the description. It's very good reading, but for nearly 6 seasons in the Buffyverse, Cordelia Chase was one of the bravest and most foundationally sound characters we had, beginning in Buffy Season 1 with this incorruptible self-interest. Even when the demon underbelly of Sunnydale was revealed to her, she showed an unrelenting pragmatism. Sure, she wanted to rule Sunnydale, but what good is ruling a school where everyone is turned evil bloodsucker? Hence, a sometimes uneasy truce with Buffy Summers. And in a circle of insecurity, anxiety-prone neurotics, Cordy proved to be an invaluable foil to some of the teenage melodrama.
Tact is just not saying true stuff.
You see, it's not that she's dumb, it's that she knows who she is, and she says what she thinks.
Whatever. I wonder when I can go.
Whatever. Can I go?
And her character takes another step in hitching her wagon to Angel, where she proved an even better foil to him than she did to the Scoobies. On Angel, Cordy's relentless drive, self-interest, and unwillingness to beat around the bush floats the mood of that show for nearly 3 seasons, preventing Angel's broody self-hatred from dragging the show too far into the deep. She learns to love a man-demon she might have previously considered beneath her station, and as a consequence is forced to take on the brain-melting visions, which predict the fates of those in need. Through the agonizing visions and the window into the pain of other people, that rigid self-interest begins to erode, though not completely. When the visions threaten to kill her, Cordy is presented with a choice by the horrifying and yet bizarrely snuggly Skip. Become half-demon, to endure them properly, or have him alter time to give her the life as the starlet she always wanted. Self-interested Cordy chooses fame and clearly loves it, until the consequences of her self-interest are laid out in front of her. She kisses Angel to take back the visions and decides to go half-demon.
Call me crazy? I thought that was a pretty fair trade.
Sure, it's fair.
But it wasn't me.
And after a brief dalliance with Diet Angel in Season 3, that being the Gruselug, she decides to meet Angel on a beach and discuss fulfilling their relationship. Cordy is so strong and fascinating. She's a female character that shows there isn't one path to strength and confidence and identity, but many, and none more valid than others. She wears the B-word pejorative as a badge of you can go f*** yourself.
I'm a bitch. I'm not a sniveling, whiny little cry, Buffy.
And then...
I'm a higher being.
Yes.
I'm scared, but I know it's right.
Wait, what? Wait, Cordy wouldn't do that.
Call me crazy. I thought that was a pretty fair trade.
Sure, it's fair. But it wasn't me.
Cordy's decision to become an angel in the finale of Season 3 was a decision made in the service of the plot and not character. And Season 4 is both a literal and figurative cataclysm that strips from Cordelia every sweet bit of character development and every brilliant bit of strength and nuance until there is nothing of the Cordelia we knew except a literal husk with a monster inside of her. And to top it off, she bangs the kid she was once putting diapers on in a scene that makes me want to run weeping to the shower. No! Ugh, God, is that even legal to watch? And the apparent twist that she was the Beastmaster all along comes far too late to remove the stain of what has transpired. Our Cordelia has been reduced and violated by this despicable plotline. So much so that it almost feels like a kindness that she's put into a coma and removed from this dumpster fire. Not only that, but the twist lacks any cleverness or hints dropped along the way to make us feel like maybe we could have seen it coming, instead landing more like a justification for all this destruction.
Uh-oh, better step on it. The rubes are catching up.
Oh, I get it. She was evil. By the time Jasmine rolled out of the unconscious Cordelia, I'll be honest, I felt like the show had gotten pretty derailed. But then, things got better. The Jasmine storyline had some really fun philosophical questions to it, and was the cause of unseating Connor's totally overrated sanity. From there, confusingly, begins the series' best season. The addition of Spike and Harmony as regulars to the cast brings some much-needed levity. Season 5 begins manifesting signs of that thing the 4th season might have convinced you was a dirty word.
You're a wee little puppet man.
Fun. Though, nearly halfway through, some decisions Angel has had to make in Season 5 have been wearing on it. And in a season of ambiguous choices and dubious moral decisions, the Queen of No Bull returns to get Angel's world spinning in the proper direction again.
Okay, Spike's a hero, and you're CEO of Hell Incorporated. What frickin' bizarre world did I wake up in?
You see, Angel needs that counterweight, the spiritual antimatter that balances out his dark and self-hating inner nature. That started as Buffy, and in Angel Seasons 1 through 3 became Cordelia. In Season 4, it was lost, and in Season 5, Spike fills the role briefly until becoming a tool of Lindsay's. After that, Angel slowly begins to fall apart, until Queen Cordy returns to help him put his world back on the proper axis.
You know how you're always trying to save, every single person in the world? Did it ever occur to you you were one of them?
This one is pretty simple. All things tend towards chaos. Entropy is about characters drifting apart. Spike and Buffy, Xander and Anya. We'll get into the nuts and bolts of it in the guide, but to this point, Xander's attitude has suggested he believed he and Anya could move past the events of Hell's Bells. Entropy, and seeing Spike and Anya desperately cling to each other for solace, is his rock bottom. And Spike's revealing his relationship with Buffy effectively breaks the group in two. But one troubled relationship that has been at the forefront the entire season is Willow and Tara. Maybe less troubling than Willow's abuse of magic is the way she abused her friends with it. From wiping Tara and Buffy's mind to endangering Dawn. Willow's giving up the magic then is really just a first step in the recovery of her relationship with Tara. And I think it's that which Tara is speaking to in the final scene of the episode.
There's just so much to work through. Trust has to be built again on both sides.
What was broken by Willow's actions hasn't been fixed by her magical sobriety. Her desire to control the people around her rather than compromise and collaborate with them manifested very early on. Magic was just the tool. In Lover's Walk, when she and Xander were finding each other irresistible, Willow was prepared to cast a spell on Xander to fix the problem, without telling him.
I thought it would go better if you didn't know.
There are many amends to be made, bridges to be rebuilt.
Can we just skip it? Can you just be kissing me now? Sander.
Okay, not quite the response I was fishing for.
No, he's here.
Think they're making up?
I hope so. That's the best part.
Your shirt. Tara? Baby? Baby, come on! Get up! No! No!
There is nothing like grief. It begins as a mammoth searing fire that threatens to destroy everything we are. We can hide from it or shut it out with things like anger and self-medication. But somewhere beneath the surface, that fire burns on, only strengthened by our desperation to look away. The thing about anger, though, and hatred, is that these things require a vacuum. They don't coexist well with any other emotions, and instead our desperation to not feel pain quickly becomes our inability to feel anything else. Season 6 of Buffy is problematic, but for some reason I never really care when I watch it. It's just so immensely ambitious in the things it has to say about addiction, depression, and grief. So much so that my inner fanboy must apparently punch my inner critic in the teeth and then weep. Tara's death came as a lightning strike, violent and abrupt. Willow's first reaction is to bargain with the gods, and then immediately to deny them. Without any recourse or any way of going back, she shuts the door on that firestorm of grief and turns to her anger instead. She leaves Tara's body where it fell. She doesn't tell anyone.
Christ, well, how come you didn't say anything?
She didn't say anything because it would have meant having to point towards the door she'd closed and acknowledging the fire on the other side of it. It seems we can do nothing with grief but let it burn. We have no control. It rules us. Anger allows us to feel powerful, and vice allows us to feel nothing. Willow dives back into the magic like an addict trying to kill themselves with their drug, and to some degree, it works, and she disappears beneath the surface of it. And let's not forget Sart.
Sometimes you don't have a choice. Well, you do have a choice. This isn't good for you.
If you believe that one choice you have takes undeniable precedent over another, then you have made yourself an object in the world at the mercy of its circumstances. Willow is a meteor streaking across the night sky, because the only other choice would be grief, and so life becomes meaningless.
This is nothing. It's all nothing.
And at the end of the line, with Willow on the verge of cracking the world in two, Xander steps in front of her.
Hey, black-eyed girl. What you doing?
I think the reason Xander's words finally penetrate Willow's armor is because of the naked truth of them.
You can't stop this.
Yeah, I get that.
He most certainly can't stop her, and that's what imbues his words with absolute veracity. He's Xander. He doesn't have the power of the Slayer or the borrowed power of a circle of wizards. Certainly he's shown himself to be self-interested at times, especially this season, so it's not a guarantee of altruism the way Buffy might have done. Now, Xander's willingness to be the first victim of Willow's cataclysm, as long as he gets to spend his last moments with her, represents an act of unconditional love. She's gone mad with power, consumed with anger, but she's still the person he'd want to sit next to watch the world fall.
I love crayon breaky Willow, and I love scary veiny Willow.
To find herself bouncing along the bottom, at her very worst, still loved, after she'd thought all love had been blown from the universe.
Shut up.
I think it's that which allows her to turn back towards the door she'd closed.
I love you.
To face the fire.
I love you, Willow.
To let it burn. There is nothing like grief. And you come to realize the only way out was through it.
I love you.
And through it we learned that that thing burning inside of us, that thing we'd turned away from, was the one we'd lost. Now, always, in our hearts.
I am, you know.
What?
Yours.
I think in the bathroom and seeing red, Spike realized that everything Buffy said was right. He would never be the man she could love because he wasn't physically or spiritually capable of it, which sent him to the trials and the acquisition of his soul. I don't think he knew what would come when he set out for a soul, only that he could never be what he wanted without it. And while the restoration of his soul allowed him to understand Buffy's plight in Season 6 for the first time...
You used me.
Yes.
Never understood it, though.
Not till now. You hated yourself.
as well as making him ripe for torture by the First in Season 7. Once the First was banished, he was never really forced to contemplate his soulless evil, never really went through the soul-searching journey Angel did, shambling around in his own guilt for 100 years.
Not like we haven't done worse back in the day.
Yeah, and it's something I'm still paying for.
And you should let it go, mate.
Damage might be my favorite episode of Angel Season 5. I love it for so many reasons. Dana's character is an enthralling consequence to Buffy's decisions at the end of Buffy Season 7. A mentally broken potential, now imbued with all the power and past life nightmares of previous Slayers. In Dana are all the voices of the victims that Ensouled Spike never had to listen to.
I have to get home to my son, to my Robin.
This is what it felt like when you snapped her neck!
And for Spike, the message probably couldn't have come in any other form. The murderer of 2 Slayers and the lover of another must now hear the voices of the dead echoing out from Dana's mind. The final scene between Angel and Spike is quiet and stunning.
She's one of us now. She's a monster.
She's an innocent victim.
So were we, once upon a time.
Once upon a time.
Part of Buffy's struggles with embracing the Slayer mantle is her perception that it makes her invisible to everyone else her own age. She isn't allowed to be a normal teenager, and that oftentimes mutes or prohibits her interaction with them. The supernatural in Sunnydale is mostly unspoken of in common circles, and while Buffy may rule it, it provides her little validation and sense of identity among her peers that don't fall in the Scooby circle. In Homecoming, spurred on by an adversarial Cordelia, the embodiment to that point of the life Buffy thought she wanted, Buffy pursues the Homecoming Queen mantle. And as her Slayer life once again intrudes and consumes her focus, Cordelia asks her why she even wanted the Homecoming mantle.
Because this is all I do. This is what my life is. I just thought, Homecoming Queen, I could pick up a yearbook someday and say, I was there. I went to high school, I had friends, and for one moment, I got to live in the world.
Of course, there's an element to Buffy's struggle intrinsic to every teenage experience. Identity is such a fragile thing in that space and time, and finding affirmation in the rigid and sometimes toxic social hierarchy of school seems an impossibility. Of course, real life doesn't function the way high school did, but how can a person be expected to understand that when these are the waters in which they are forced to swim? I wonder if parents sometimes forget that. But once again, the Slayer role, that consistent call to adulthood, allows Buffy a perspective not afforded just anyone. In earshot, she temporarily inherits the ability to hear the thoughts of everyone around her, giving her some insight into something she hadn't considered, something she shares with Jonathan, a student feeling crushed beneath that social hierarchy.
Every single person down there is ignoring your pain because they're too busy with their own. If you could hear what they were feeling. Loneliness, the confusion.
This is a hard-earned perspective of pure empathy. It reminds me of a word from the Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows, Sonder. The realization that each random passerby is living a life as vivid and complex as your own. It's a notion I find both reassuring and humbling. We are not special. Our fears and anxieties are no more worthy of being addressed by other people than anyone else's. But there's something relieving about the understanding that absolutely every one of us is in the same boat. Buffy has given up the need for reward and recognition, and in the prom, we see her quietly sacrificing and struggling against Tucker's nefarious plot, so that the other students of Sunnydale can have a peaceful night of celebration, which makes it all the more moving when she realizes that one of the things they decide to celebrate is her.
Is Buffy Summers here tonight? It's from all of us, and it has written here, Buffy Summers, class protector.
Spike is maybe one of the most interesting wrinkles in the Buffyverse. Between the wrench he throws in the soul canon when he occasionally demonstrates acts of seeming altruism, to why was he able to hit Buffy in Season 6, to how does all of that factor into what happened in Seeing Red? And after the events of that episode, can he ever be trusted or forgiven? Soul aside. One of the key things to understanding him I think can be found in the template model for vampirism I brought up in the Amends review, as well as the discussion of vampire love from the Lover's Walk review, where Liam was a man without interests or passions that that left little template for the demon that created Angelus, and so spawned one of the darkest, most evil vampires in history, William was a lover and a poet, and so too is vampire Spike. And I think that Spike and Drew make it clear that while love may be a vestige left from the template of their human selves,
you two stink of humanity.
Vampires can love, but without a soul and the empathy that develops in tandem with it, they can only do it selfishly. We see it regularly by the way Spike treats Drusilla as a possession or a prize he'd won. Still, there are a few actions in Season 5 that would suggest maybe the chip has forced Spike along some new route of thinking, a route that has opened up for him the possibility of a selfless act. Specifically in Season 5 when he lets Glory torture him rather than giving up Dawn as the key. And afterwards, in a ruse to figure out why he did it, he tells Buffy and Stealth as the bot,
Buffy, anything happened to Dawn, you'd destroy her. I couldn't live for being in that much pain.
Unlike Drusilla, Buffy resists possession from him in any form, and Spike is perceptive.
That's the secret. Every Slayer has a death wish.
And yet, selfishly, he loves her. And if she won't let him have her, possess her, and keep her from those things, he can at least stand in front of her and keep the bomb from going off. After all, there's always the chance she'll notice. But in Season 6, the bow breaks. Buffy falls deep into a numbing depression and uses Spike self-destructively in order to feel anything. She allows herself to be possessed. And when she finally comes to her senses and denies him herself, that thing he wants even more than his own self-preservation, it leads to the events of seeing red. An event humanly horrifying, but perhaps not that different than what Spike had already done to Drew on numerous occasions.
I want Drew back. I just got to be the man I was. I'll find her wherever she is, tie her up, torture her, till she likes me again.
Finally, in Spike's eyes, we see a genuine realization that he isn't capable of being the man that Buffy can love, not with the limited understanding of love as he has without a soul. And in the hierarchy of Spike's needs, we've already seen that love ranks higher than self-preservation. Though who can say that he had any genuine sense of what it would be like to have a soul? Only that he wasn't going to get what he wanted without one. After he's completed the trials and begun to come to grips with what has actually happened by virtue of this newfound gift of empathy, he finally has what I believe to be his first expression of selfless love.
I'm not asking you for anything. When I say I love you, it's not because I want you, or because I can't have you. It has nothing to do with me. I love what you are.
For me, it's an exquisite moment of self-awareness and humanity. I Will Remember You is an intricate folding episode that poses a seemingly simple question. What if Buffy and Angel got a happy ending? It opens with a slow pullback from a clock before Buffy shows up in LA to chastise Angel. As they indulge in some choice Bangel speak, they are attacked by a Moira demon, which they pursue into the sewers. Angel seemingly defeats the Moira, but in the process of doing so absorbs some of its blood, which turns him human. Angel and Doyle consult the oracles, who inform him he is now mortal and no longer a champion for them. And what follows is a sweet set of scenes in which Buffy and Angel get to indulge in intimacy, unfettered by any of the normal realities of their world. There is no curse, no calling, only love.
This is a dream. You're human for like a minute, and already there's cookie dough fudge mint chip in the fridge.
In fact, their kiss on the beach was foreshadowed in a dream Buffy had in Anne, and perhaps that dream in some way informs the reality of this scene.
This is the first time I've ever really felt this way.
What way?
Just like I've always wanted to. Like a normal girl.
This is the dream Buffy has always wanted. Her struggles throughout Season 1 and 2 all orbit around her desire to be normal in spite of the Slayer calling. But she is not normal. She's the Slayer, and Angel is a champion. Fulfilling a calling, attaining greater purpose requires sacrifice. But for a day, they are allowed the happiness that has always been denied them.
It's perfect.
There is an interesting pattern to a few of the Angel's seasons in the way the writers are always breaking the team down and building it back up again. In Season 1, that was through Doyle's sacrifice. In Season 2, Angel becomes impatient with defeating evil the right way and ditches his team of do-gooders to go after Wolfram and Hart.
You're all fired.
Fighting fire with fire. Literally. The team breakdown happens again in Season 3 and most disastrously in Season 4. In nearly every case, I found that the inner turmoil of the team went on a bit longer than I'd hoped for. But even so, the payoff to the pronounced period of Angel's inner darkness from Season 2 leads to one of my favorite philosophical insights in all the Buffyverse, a necessary component to the sometimes bleak existentialism. Angel's lapse into darkness is first foreshadowed in Are You Now or Have You Ever Been? When he tries to help a young woman in need, but later, after the crowd turns on him, abandons a hotel full of humans to a paranoia demon. This beat is repeated when he tries to save Darla, but after she is turned, he abandons a room full of lawyers to be eaten by Darla and Drusilla. Angel's motivating inner conflict centers around the Shanshu, the belief that he will play some part in an upcoming apocalypse and, as a reward, be restored to human, despite the fact that the prophecy is unclear as to whether or not he incites the apocalypse or prevents it. It would seem then that the journey for redemption has a clear point of completion, a destiny he needed to get to, and in Season 2 he becomes impatient to reach that destination and resorts to gruesome ends. And in Reprise, when he discovers that Wolfram and Hart are having a 75-year review, and learns of the home office in hell, he's even willing to descend into the very depths to put an end to this struggle.
You're gonna try to go down there and destroy the whole lot of them, aren't you?
And in the ride down to the home office, a very dead Holland Manners asks Angel,
Now tell me, just what do you imagine that would accomplish? In the end, I mean. It'll be the end.
Clearly, Angel just wants this all done with, to reach the final destination, and Holland reveals something Wolfram and Hart knows that Angel hasn't quite grasped yet.
You're not gonna win. Well, no. Of course we are. We have no intention of doing anything so prosaic as winning. Then why?
The reveal that Earth is the home office is an anticlimax, and it is supposed to be. Angel can't win, can't swing the last sword and destroy the last demon and banish evil from the world. Evil is in every one of us, including Angel. He can't banish it any more than he could destroy the whole world. Fed up, tired, depressed, and at rock bottom, he decides to just destroy his own world by sleeping with Darla and losing his soul.
I'm not playing. I just want to feel something besides the cold.
All of this is an inverted echo of the episode Amends, in which Buffy saved Angel from suicide and then helps him find his way back. But I don't think he ever really understood what happened. Here, Darla inadvertently saves him from destroying his soul, and he begins to find his own way back. You see, here's the thing about the Shanshu. Within the show's central metaphor of Angel being a recovering alcoholic, the vague and ambiguous Shanshu represents a constant nagging and ever-present question. How long do I have to fight before I can be normal again? There's a wonderful bit in the show Elementary in which Sherlock, a recovering drug addict, explains the temporal struggle of being a recovering addict. Consider his dialogue in the context of Angel.
Sobriety is simply a grind. It's just this leaky faucet which requires constant maintenance, and in return offers only not to drip. I used to imagine that a relapse would be the climax to some grand drama. Now I think that if I were to use drugs again, it would in fact be an anticlimax. It would be a surrender to the incessant drip, drip, drip of existence.
The following episode, Epiphany, is wonderful in a number of ways. It is both a literal and figurative ray of light, a humorous break from the extreme darkness of Season 3, and a moment of true understanding for Angel. As he reunites with the gang, he is bubbly and happy about his newfound insight, and really putting this new epiphany to the test. Shunned by the team, run over by a jealous Lindsay, and beaten with a sledgehammer, he still shows up. And in the courtyard with Kate, near the episode's end, we get one of the most profound moments from either show.
If there's no great glorious end to all this, if nothing we do matters, and all that matters is what we do.
See, here's the thing. Redemption isn't a place to get to. It's not a finish line you cross and all's forgiven, because there is no finish line except death. And in the Buffyverse, there's not even that sometimes. Redemption is a state of being, a series of continuous actions. What we do today, right now. In fact, consider what all 10 of the moments on this list have in common.
Leslie's dead.
Don't make this hard.
Your shirt.
She's a monster.
I love you.
No, you don't. But thanks for saying it.
In I Will Remember You, Angel literally uses time to kill his own chance of a happy ending. Time moves the characters past these moments. There are no happy endings. Even the series finales of Buffy and Angel aren't actually endings. What should we do now, Buffy? And let's go to work. I treasure that about both of these shows, because that's life. We don't really get to hold on to things. We get these moments where we realize everything is going to be all right, and that supplies us with the strength to carry on. We get a memory, and that's it. There's a wonderful talk by Alan Watts in which he suggests a common human fallacy is the belief that life is a race or a mountain climb with a serious goal or finish to cross. But sometimes when we live that way and cross those lines, there's disappointment because time quickly moves us past that momentary glow. A lifetime is more like a piece of music that rises and falls and rises back again. Perhaps then our greatest ambition might simply be to be present. Breathe deep, let go, and dance.